This week on Sons of Issachar, the episode, we will look into biblical examples of fatherhood and families, some of them failures, and also we'll apply that to life today.
Welcome to the Sons of Issachar. We have, of course, with us our special guest, Ainsley Lockwood, a college graduate in Montgomery, Alabama, along with her father, Scott Lockwood, and myself, Bill Lockwood. We're talking about family issues and fatherhood and discipline in the home and what a Christian home should look like and how do we reflect that in the Christian home. So we're thinking about biblical examples in this episode of individuals who either did or did not really fulfill the role that they should have. And I'm thinking as we begin regarding David. David, of course, is a man after God's own heart. He was a great godly man. After God's own heart meant that he had a humble heart. He did, of course, sin grievously. And in his grievous sin with Bathsheba, what came out of that later was the fact that he was unable seemingly to discipline his sons in the direction they needed to go or correct them in any way whatsoever. So consequently, we have this passage, this is from 1 Kings chapter 1 and verse 6. This regards Adonijah. So just the backstory of this, when David sinned with Bathsheba, he was confronted by Nathan the prophet, and Nathan convicted him of sin. And David said that the man, before he realized that of whom Nathan was speaking, that man ought to suffer fourfold. Well, David would indeed, he pronounced his own sentence, he would suffer fourfold because of the sin that he had committed with Bathsheba. First of all, the son that he and Bathsheba would have would actually die. And that was surprising to the people who were around David because he was so torn when the child was alive, and he beseeched God and prayed to God that he would spare his life, but God took the child to be with him. Then nextly, we have his son, Amnon, was also committed great crime against Tamar, his half-sister. She was the full sister to Absalom. Absalom, therefore, so Amnon now dies at the hands of Absalom. Absalom now tries to take the kingdom from him. Absalom dies in battle. Joab kills him. And so as David is an old man lying on his deathbed, his next in line son for the kingdom, he thought, this is what his son thought, Adonijah thought, well, the kingdom is mine. Even though David had promised it to his son by Bathsheba, the next son that had been born after the death of that firstborn one, and that man was Solomon, so it would be Solomon's kingdom. But here's what the passage in 1 Kings chapter 1 and verse 6 reads, and it always has struck me as a weakness in a father. So this is 1 Kings 1 and 6. Regarding Adonijah, his father had never at any time displeased him by asking, "Why have you done thus and so?" He was a handsome man. He was born next after Absalom. His father never could find the strength to correct his son, Adonijah. Adonijah ends up dying, of course, at the hands of Benaiah when after David had passed, and Solomon realized that Adonijah was vying for the throne again. So Adonijah died. So David lost 4 sons, 4 children in the fourfold punishment. But much of it came about because he was unable to discipline adequately his children. And Adonijah is a perfect illustration. He never crossed his sons saying, "You may not do that. Don't do that."
You know, I think I just thought about this, and as you were talking, Bill, the other case is so similar, and that is Eli. You know, the priest Eli said that he had preferred his sons over Jehovah God. And so Jehovah God's, restrictions on him and the way he was going to take him away from the priesthood and find another lineage for the priesthood seemed to be kind of drastic. But, he said you had preferred your sons because he said you didn't constrain them. Now think about this. His sons when the sins that we know of that were pointed out were while they were working as priests, which meant they were over 30 years old. And Eli had told them and showed his displeasure at them and had said, "Why do you do these things and sin against God?" So, what does that mean? He showed his displeasure. He wasn't happy with them, but Bill, that wasn't enough. That
No.
wasn't enough. God said you didn't restrain them. You weren't drastic enough. When it came down to really choosing me over your sons, you didn't do it. You chose your sons. You showed your displeasure, but you didn't step in and you didn't discipline and you didn't get after it like you should have. The other examples I'm thinking of are just, in general, why is it that our society doesn't seem to understand these things about fatherhood and how important it is? When Nebuchadnezzar took the young men up to Babylon, we look at that and we say, well, he was kind of doing them a good favor. He was gonna educate him in all the way of the Chaldeans. Listen, Nebuchadnezzar was going to control an entire nation and change a culture. So he took the young men that were leaders and from leadership families, because back in that day, they would have easily understood it that there was going to be a certain young men out of certain families that were the upper crust of that society. And he was going to take them, castrate them, put them in the palace, and teach them all the Chaldean ways. And then, thus, he was going to be able to control an entire culture and nation through the young men. And why we sat back and let the schools go and have done everything that we could just to say, well, children will choose their own ways. But, Satan's a little smarter than that. He's been out in the schools, he's been out in the universities, and they've been attacking the families all along. And we sit back thinking, well, Johnny's going to learn how to stand up to all this, you brought that up in the last episode. And I always think about your sermon. One time you preached a great sermon on Peter standing by the fire, warming himself. That's what we're doing with children. We throw out into the public schools and go, well, they need to learn to stand up for what's right. And they need to learn to be able to, get by with and not be tempted with those things. And I think, yeah, take an apostle that was with Jesus for 3 years, witnessing miracles and everything else, and had performed them himself, and stick him by the fire, and where no one was a friend of Jesus around that fire. How did it come out? How'd he do?
Yeah, not very well.
Yeah, but if you want to take a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, throw them up in the local junior high where all this mess is going on and the teachers are teaching everything against, God and the Bible, then somehow we're just, well, it's okay. We'll fix it when we get home at dinner.
Let's go back to Hophni and Phinehas for a moment in 1 Samuel chapter 2, Eli's sons. The crimes they committed, sleeping with the women who came to the tabernacle, as well as stealing the portions that belong not to the priest, but to the families, just taking those at will. And Eli didn't restrain his sons, but he did say, well, why have you done this? In other words, that is not restraining. That is gentle parenting.
That's right. That's right. I disagree with you, Johnny. I don't think that's a good idea.
Is that the proper choice we should make, son?
Right, that's right. Right.
Now, is that how?
Yeah. Explain to Daddy why you think that's a good idea. Do make better choices?
Is that how your dad did it, Ainsley?
Yeah. I wouldn't know. You'd have to ask my sisters.
You know what? When you look at Ainsley's life and her sister's lives as well, that's not the kind of parenting that they had. Like, tell me the choices that we are making. Explain to me what your thought processes are on these.
Yeah, I was just thinking there was those times where, all Dad had to do was just snap his fingers and look at us, and we would just line up like the Von Trapp family. We knew what that meant.
That is good. Well, I'm glad he had a Julie Andrews in his family to help him out, though. That being his good wife. Well, okay, so discipline in the home. This is interesting, too, to think about reflecting back upon Eli's family as well as David's family. The Catholic Church says, give us a child until they're 7 years old and they'll always be Catholic. Now, that of course, obviously Catholicism is an apostasy from the New Testament, but it does reflect, I believe, where they realize and what the people everywhere universally recognize as the formative years of a young person, and that is until they're 7 or 8 years old. And that you're setting them up. When they get to be teenagers, it's too late, really, to start the disciplinary process or the training process that they need.
Well, and that's why the military, with a formula that has worked up until recently. I don't know what they're doing now. I mean, they're growing ponytails and everything else, I guess. But the formula was that you could take a young man off the street that didn't get that discipline, if I heard it once, I heard it 100 times, and it could have even been part of my story myself. But so many young men would have told me to say, "Look, the military saved my life because they had no discipline in the home." They didn't know what a standard was. Therefore they had no self-discipline. Therefore, their character was not developed. And with all the myriad of choices out there, it was too difficult for them to, go through the jungle and make their way without, getting into the mess and the quagmire. So they would come to the military, where now we had quite the job to do. But that job, you had to set a standard. It had to be a kind of a team spirit. They had to be able to belong to an organization that had a very strong conformity to it. That was you could call it hazing or positive peer pressure, whatever you want to do it. But there was this sense of conformity that really works even on adults. But it has to be a significant emotional event in an adult's life, or they're not changing. And that has to do with repentance and conversion as well, Bill, as you know. But it's got to be a significant emotional event. And that's what the military was really good at: taking people, breaking them down, building them back up. And then, that esprit de corps, that sense of value and the sense of belonging to a unit, and then instilling discipline in them where they can now replace all those other things that were important to them with a self-discipline that they became very proud of.
Now that is a great illustration. Thinking about that, I'm looking at Ainsley here, and she is a great athlete. But I remember you telling me stories about Ainsley and her sisters as well, that even from a younger age, they were so self-disciplined on the athletic field, and they would work out extra all the time, and just their schedules are so demanding, and they would be part of it. So I mean, the athleticism demands some discipline in it, and I think I don't know. That's just my view of how you trained your life, Ainsley, just through those different things, not simply in athletics, but also in biblical morals teaching. But is that how do you see that?
Maybe I tell you what. Let's take a quick break, Bill, and then come
Sure.
back. And then I want her to tell you, not only answer that question, but then also talk about the wall and building skills on the wall, and how disappointed she'd be coming back from the off season and finding out nobody else did anything.
Oh, okay. All right. That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take an off season for about just a few seconds.
Yeah,
Anyway,
sure.
and we'll be right back. More Sons of
right.
Issachar.
Reading the Bible, studying the Bible, and meditating on the Bible are three different activities. Meditation is really looking at a text and applying it to self and saying, how does that apply to me? I'm glad to be able to put these lessons that I've written into a podcast that might help many as you develop the attitude of meditating on the Word. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on your favorite podcast app so that you never miss an episode.
Hi, I'm Auburn Chasen, author of The 5 Sentences in the Plan of Salvation and Counting to 10 with the Bible, children's books. And soon to come out will be Fruitful Grief. I wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about my books and also tell you about my publishing journey, because what a dream it has been. So in the past couple of years, I've written a couple of children's books that are designed to help kids learn these foundational skills while also learning about God. So the five senses in the plan of salvation helps introduce the gospel message at a young age while comparing it to things they are already learning about their bodies and about the world around them. Then the other one is counting to 10 with the Bible, and it's helping kids learn to count from 1 to 10 while reminding them of these stories that have the same numbers within them. And it's all rooted in Scripture. My goal is to get families connected to Scripture, and my heart behind them is simple. It's taking faith, making it fun and practical, and helping families at the same time. When I was considering publishing these books, I had a lot of nerves. Working with Lightway Publishing has been like a dream come true. It has been so pleasant, start to finish, with everything I've written over the last couple of years. I trust them implicitly. They are so kind and communicative. They are so respectful of the messages that I want to share with the audiences that I want to get to. They're so careful with my words. Publishing can be so overwhelming, but this experience reminded me that it doesn't have to be. Lightway Publishing are some of the best people I know, and I trust them with my work. And if you have a story to share, you should share it. Get in touch with Lightway Publishing. They're some of the best people, and they will take such precious care of your work.
Welcome back to the Sons of Issachar. We're talking about family, we're talking about discipline, we're talking about family cohesion, and we're joined, of course, by Ainsley Lockwood. So, Ainsley, when we left it a moment ago, we wanted to hear from you about discipline, self-discipline, and something about the wall. So, I wonder if you maybe just take it from there.
Yeah, Dad just kind of reminded me of that, which is a very good point. Growing up, I was so into soccer. That was just my passion in life. And so, as other kids would go read a book after school or go ride their bike or whatever, I was always out kicking against a wall. And if it was against the house, somewhere against a garage,
The
the
car.
car, yeah, I think
Uh-huh.
whatever I could kick against,
That's all right.
and
Your dad did it against a wall with a window with baseball. So,
yeah, yeah. So it just trickled down to me.
Yeah.
No, so Dad, actually, once we moved here, we went out to the fields and we found this wall out by the fields. And as I got older, it was just the thing where he would take me out there and I would go and it would be, 110 degrees outside. And I would go and kick against that wall for about 2 hours straight just because I was so dedicated. I was so disciplined to become better at that sport. And it was something that really trained my mind as an athlete, but also as a person about discipline itself. And I would do that all summer, and then I would come back to preseason, and all these girls would come back, out of shape, not having touched a ball or anything like that. And I was
Oh,
just so angry, because I was so passionate about it. And so now as a coach myself, I actually told the girls the other day, I said, my number one advice is to go find a wall the whole summer and kick against it.
that is a good story. The wall. Now, did your dad join you at the wall, or what did he do?
Sat in the car with the air conditioner on.
Go ahead.
I didn't have that kind of discipline. Bill, I was gonna have her piggyback on that and tell you now that how does that carry over? I know Ainsley was extremely frustrated when she would get to college soccer thinking everybody was as serious and as disciplined as she was, to find out that these girls were, maybe drinking and staying up all night and doing all this. And then you could tell on the practice field, and Ainsley continually as a captain and a leader for 3 years, just continually driving at him to like, look, you're not failing just yourself, but you're failing the team and you're failing individuals like me who spend all this time. We're ready to come out here and play soccer. You're hungover. And then, of course, the coach wouldn't step in or anything. But I wonder if you can comment on that, Ames.
Mm.
No, yeah. I mean, I think with being so dedicated to my sport, it truly did frustrate me when I would see that. And again, I think it goes back to just having someone in a leadership role who is willing to call all of that out. And I never was in that position where I felt where I felt like I had someone in a leadership role who would call those girls out, and it was always very frustrating. And I always, I look to the story of Joseph, who, is a young man and in a very vulnerable point in his life, which college is one of those points in your life where you're becoming who you are as a person truly, and you're setting yourself apart. And so sometimes even for me, your actions, they say a lot, but um, if you don't call people out, if you don't speak the truth and speak about discipline, then you're really not doing anything. You can live by example, but you really have to speak the truth. And I know there's this verse in Ezekiel, and this might be going a little off topic here, but there's a verse in Ezekiel where and I think it's 33:6 or something, and it's talking about, if a watchman sees a sword and fails to blow his horn, then I, the Lord, will require the blood on the watchman's hand. And so I think we as Christians have a duty to show the people in the world who might, come to a game hungover, or who go and sleep with their boyfriend and, during the weekend or whatever. You have a duty to show them and to tell them that this is way bigger than just you. This affects the team, this affects your future. And so I think, a house divided against itself cannot stand, and that holds true with a team especially.
Right. Do you have something you mention on that, Scott?
I was just, when she said that about sleeping with her boyfriend, it's interesting. There's a lot of people might be listening thinking, oh, how does that affect the team? You know what? These passions that these college kids have, they do affect the team, and it's affected them in many ways, particularly all the perversions that are going on these teams now. You can imagine what it's like to have all of these squabbles and all these, partnership triangles going on, and the jealousies and all this nonsense within these college sport teams when it shouldn't even be part of it. And if it's even if it is a boy and a girl kind of thing, you have these men that are hooked on pornography that then they want to film this, and the next thing you know, the girl can't play because he's released a film to the nation.
Yeah.
So all of this, it does affect it. It affects the individual's lives. It ruins people. It's like, look,
Yeah.
if we were to follow the Bible, I remember one of these individuals that we had worked on for quite a while and studied with, and she used the words, she wanted the freedom to be able to do and live her life the way she wanted, and we tried to impress upon her. We know that that's what you're going to do now, but I want you to remember these words. You're actually choosing a life of enslavement. And someday when you wake up and your life is full of chaos and trauma, I want you to think back. We offered you a different path. That is a disciplined path, but it's freedom in Christ to say no to these things that would enslave you, because they do have consequences.
And
Right.
that kind of reminds me too, I've been in multiple conversations with people, especially my age in college, where they're looking at the Bible as a book of rules, and having that discipline, just as they could care less about it. And so it's hard to tell them, discipline isn't just about following rules, but it's about creating a character that reflects Christ. And that's hard to teach people who especially don't even believe in the existence of God, let alone a Christian
Right.
lifestyle.
That's so sad that people look at it that way, because they don't really look at the Bible, I suppose. They just hear that and they just repeat it. But well, those are good notes to end on. I guess it's probably about time to wrap this up on this particular episode. So unless there's something else, Scott, that you're thinking
No,
about.
that's great, Bill. Sure.
Yeah.
I think this is a great topic. I think this is kind of where the rubber meets the road for Christian families today, particularly in the culture of America and what's happening in the society, and for us to even think that we shouldn't be preaching on this and talking about it, because this is the things that are affecting our children and affecting families, and it's just going to continue on, and it's going to be a difficult road ahead for America, and as a whole, and of course the families.
And the church too, because the church is losing the young people, and partially because of this right here, what
Right.
we're talking about. So thank you so much for joining us, Ainsley. It was great to have you on this, and we want you on a future podcast too. So
Oh,
you
yeah,
come.
thank you. Thanks for letting me talk.
That's great. This was wonderful. Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I think all that both of you have said is so important. So thank you for letting me teeing you up for it.
All
Okay.
right, Bill. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Sons of Issachar podcast, hosted by me, Scott Lockwood, and my brother, Bill Lockwood. This show is produced by Lightway Media and John Cackman. Our theme song is by Alex Grohl. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. You can find us on your favorite music streaming platforms, including Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. If you have time, please share with others and let them know about our show. Find more information and episodes online at lightweightmedia.com/Sons of Issachar.